I don't know what it was.
Subliminal messages.
Well, it was like, I walked in and she's complaining about, like, it's not ready. I'm like, what is it? I look up and see someone's getting their head cut off. And I'm like, what? Who is doing this? It's some sort of anime.
Oh my gosh. Kids' cartoons, though, are kind of like, have you ever seen, like, either videos or, like, they break down, like, cartoons from back in the day, or, like, Disney cartoons, or, like, they have all these, like, innuendos in there, and you're like, oh, like, I didn't notice that when I was a kid, and then you're, like, watching it again, you're like, I was corrupted.
Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Film Asylum, where if you are crazy about movies, you belong here. We are your hosts, Colin Peters,
John Rochetter.
I still hate you. Jeff Manfred.
What did I do?
Your face today, man.
My face today?
Like, you're really late today.
What else is new?
Axl Rose.
It was funny. He even texted us like, hey, I'm going to be late. As usual.
Smiley face, laughing face. How many more emojis can I put in this?
But we actually have two special guests today. First is Thea's actually on the show, so you'll hear random music and her yelling at us.
Hi, Thea. And then we also have a filmmaker joining us today. We have Kelly Murray.
Yay, Kelly!
Yay. Thank you for having me on today.
Thank you for coming on today.
Of course.
Because we don't get too many guests on this channel, and it's always a rarity, and it's always a pleasure when we get somebody.
Yeah, the guest list is growing, though.
It has been. We
Yeah.
get a couple more and more people intrigued to talk about certain subjects on the channel, and we're excited to talk more about filmmaking.
So, Kelly, if you don't mind, would you please introduce yourself and tell everybody, like, how you got involved with filmmaking, what kind of films you've done and are doing, what's upcoming?
Sure. Yeah.
And also, like, if you have a specific movie or something that influenced you, hey, we'd love to know and hear about it.
Okay. So I'm Kelly Murray. I'm a writer and a director. I have done a lot of short films so far, kind of in a variety of genres, drama, horror. Did like a fantasy historical piece, which I'm really proud of. How I got into filmmaking? Ooh, there's a story. I didn't go to film school. I majored in English at University of Delaware, and I was always interested in film, but I never quite knew how to approach it. For whatever reason, I didn't think film school was a viable option, and I guess it was always like Hollywood and film seems like unattainable, you know what I mean? It was like over there in a pipe dream. So I didn't really pursue it in college, and I started working out of school in a marketing position. And the owner of the company, I worked for a very small company in Delaware, one of his really close friends was an independent filmmaker. And one day he was like, hey, my friend Chris is going to come in. He needs to use our office for a pickup scene for his film he's making. If you're interested, just want to let you know, like, he'll be using the office, and he's a really cool guy, and I kind of piqued my interest because I was like, ooh, film, like, that sounds really cool. And I didn't, never met a filmmaker in Delaware where I grew up before, so I asked to shadow him, and that was kind of like my first taste of, like, a film set, kind of in my own backyard. And it was like really short day. It was just like a couple hours. I think I sat in like as an extra or something, and it was just an office scene. But it was really cool to see, a director and a DP kind of working together and blocking the scenes up close. And that was kind of how I got into it, because after that moment, I was like hooked. Like, I was like, marketing's cool, but film is awesome. And like, I always kind of, was interested in it. So I was like, okay, how can I continue doing this or getting involved? So actually what ended up happening, I actually ended up getting let go from that job. They were downsizing. The company was downsizing. Oh. Yeah, it sucked, but it opened up all this time for me. So when I was on unemployment, I just started applying to sets in Philly. I just took any job I could get because I just was interested in learning more about working in film. So I started as a PA. That was my first job. on a film called Brotherly Love, which was produced by Queen Latifah. And it was, I think it was directed by Jamal Hill, and it was shot in West Philadelphia. So I was a production office PA, and my job was to drive around. We did a lot of night shoots, so it was like all hours of the night, and I like delivered coffee, delivered lunch to to people.
So you were the gopher, as
pretty
they say.
much, yeah. I had joined at the end of the production because they had been shooting for a while, and I guess they needed extra support in the production office. So it was literally like a 2-week job that I had signed up for. And yeah, I was like driving around West Philly, like as a PA, I had like no business being there, like trying to figure it out. I wasn't really on set for a lot of that job just because I was in the production office, and it was more of like be available when we need you guys kind of thing. I worked with the unit production manager and the assistant production coordinator. Like there was like a little team of us. But that was like my first film job on set. And then from there, I just kind of, my trajectory, I guess you would say, has not been straight line. It's been all sorts of things. I did some work in art department. I did some production coordination, just on different indie sets in the area, Philadelphia area. And then in 2016, I wrote my first script for a short film. And that's kind of how, from then on, I've kind of shifted into focusing on writing and directing my own stories. Soundtrack of our lives.
Yeah.
You kept mentioning West Philadelphia. I just keep thinking of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yeah.
Hey, West Philadelphia, born and raised on a playground where I spend most of my days.
Keep going. Tell us more.
Please, we don't know this story.
I think that song's copyrighted though. So
I think it might be.
unless this is the remix.
I can't go too far.
Listen, I'm gonna admit something to you guys. I don't really like that show, and I've never watched it.
That's okay. That's fine,
I watched it when I was younger.
But did you know that Uncle Phil did the voice of the Shredder in the Ninja Turtles?
Yes, I did.
cartoon?
That was fantastic.
Really?
Yes, he did.
James Avery?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Oh my God, that's awesome.
Unfortunately, I never knew that until he passed.
Aw.
Yeah, and I was like, no shit.
The things you learn.
But Kelly, that's a really interesting story, and that's really awesome that you did that, and how you're like so well rounded. Like how you said you worked as like the gopher and as a production assistant, and then you're more well rounded, so you know on set then, and you're not afraid to take on other aspects of filmmaking.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they like to just get into a film position and stay there. Like, oh, I just want to be a director. Oh, I just want to do sound, or I just want to do lights. And it's like, no, it's actually really important to know like what
different
to do.
Aspects,
like originally, I actually grew up in the performing arts, and I did a lot more acting and stage work. So I knew acting growing up, but then even as a young kid, I got into like the behind the scenes and what guys like originally Tim Burton was my guy, and then the older I got, the more I got into guys like Tarantino, and I was like, wow, this is like really cool listening to what these guys do. And those guys are like two totally different dynamics. Like Tim Burton likes adding more art and his own like tone to the movie. Like when you see it, you go, okay, that's definitely. He
has an aesthetic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you see a Tarantino film, it's not so much the aesthetic, but it's the structure and the psychology where it's like, that's a Tarantino film.
Yeah.
And I loved like how I got to like transition and know this filmmaker versus that filmmaker. But it always helps because, like I said, I knew acting, so I know how to talk to actors on set. And knowing lights, you know how to talk to the lighting people and say, hey, Grip, maybe what do you think about a little blue? And they say, well, for this scene, maybe the psychology of it is really like you need maybe red, something different.
It's all those different elements. There's so many elements that come together in a scene when you're crafting it, whether it's like the visual aesthetic of it or the narrative part of the story, And as a director, you're kind of you're like the composer of an orchestra. You're kind of moving all these different parts. But like you said, I think it's important to know, or it's helpful to know how these different roles operate, because it'll help you run your set better. Like,
exactly.
For me, I think because I didn't study film in school, and I really dedicated, my focus to it. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
My focus to it. Talking with my hands.
Oh my God! What
I'm not
a
even
coincidence! Jeff does the exact same thing.
I'm not Italian, but I'm very nothing.
You're alone on that one, Jeff.
Nothing against Italians, but no, I think because I kind of encountered it and dedicated my time to it, in my 20s, I think I really just threw myself into it focus-wise, where I was like, okay, anything I can get, not anything, but I was open to taking different roles, just to kind of get my foot in the door and meet people. And that's the great thing about filmmaking is it is a multidisciplinary art. When you're working on a set, I think once you're in it for a while and it depends on, I think, what you want to get out of it. I have friends that all they do is they crew. That's their full-time job. They're grips and they travel around to different gigs, and they've been doing it for decades, because they kind of finessed that skill, and they're at a certain day rate, you know what I mean? So they're not going to take an art PA job just to get on a set. They've built kind of their network of people. But for me, because I didn't really have that methodology of film under my belt in the beginning, I was like, okay, so I did the PA job, there's an opening for an art department PA. So I was like, okay, well, I was involved in theater in college too. I did costume and makeup. So I was like, okay, well, I can apply those skills. So it was more about learning, meeting people, and then, I've just been fortunate that I'm still able to make films and stories. And for me, I had wanted to do freelance filmmaking. I did a stint where I tried to do it, and it was really tough. There is a hub in Philly, and obviously we're so close to New York, but it's a grueling lifestyle. You know what I mean? Long days, sometimes little pay. It's tough. So that didn't really work out for me, but I ended up falling back on my writing, which I went to school for. So then that to me I've been really fortunate to kind of have continued success with the writing. So I've sort of stepped back from working in a crew position on set, and I'm like, okay, focusing on, bringing the scripts to life, learning the business side of things. I'm kind of all right, I've kind of have a good grasp of the methodology of making a film. Now let's figure out how you sell a script and, kind of go in that aspect too. So, so I've been fortunate to be able to continue to do that.
That's great.
Yeah.
That is really awesome. And I like how you said that you just kind of progressed with that. And like you said, you start with the script because that's where it all starts. It starts with a blueprint. And if that blueprint isn't any good or worthwhile doing, then what are you doing with it? And, it's always good to have that extra ammunition because say you do get a studio gig, most of the time they sign you to a contract for a 3-picture deal or whatever. It's always beneficial to have another script or two close by, because I remember learning from some screenwriting classes that I had, they said that's usually how it happens. You sell something and it's okay, we like it, and especially if it's successful,
and they're like, what else do you have?
And then other studios come after you as well, and then you wind up selling them something, but then at the same time you're still contracted to give that studio a script, and you also have a certain time frame too, I believe.
Deadlines.
And sometimes they kind of wind up just giving them a throwaway script, and unfortunately they get made, which is stupid to me.
Well, I think it depends on what the script is, because if it's something that the studio can profit off of, and they're gonna be like, all right, let's make it.
It's true.
Unfortunately, but I agree with you if it's not a certain caliber, because there are definitely those arguments out right now about the quality of cinema and what cinema is nowadays, because everything's streaming now. You're not going to the theater. I think Martin Scorsese had made some comment about I think there was a controversial statement he made about certain films weren't cinematic enough, or they weren't considered cinema.
I
think it was Marvel comic books. Yeah.
Netflix and everything.
Yeah.
That was somebody else who said about Netflix. Was this Spielberg?
Yeah.
And Christopher Nolan. Oh, no. Spielberg said something about Netflix movies shouldn't get Oscar nominations.
That's right. They shouldn't be considered for awards, or at least in that caliber.
I think just because the landscape of entertainment or consuming entertainment has changed dramatically. think the magic of the movies obviously is experienced within a theater, and I mean that's how we all grew up, and like now for better or for worse you can experience it in your living room. So it's kind of like, I think it's like when you have too much of a good thing, sometimes like the value some would argue that the value might drop, but I guess that's an ongoing
drive-in.
Or drive-in.
Like that is one thing it's one art form that is dying.
Yeah.
But we just happen to find one that's still doing it. And,
I love mahoning, by the way. I love mahoning. I've been there a couple times. It's awesome.
Like honestly, I'm already setting up to go up 2 more times this year. So
Zombie Fest, is that one? Yeah.
That's a given. No matter what, I'm gonna watch zombie movies. So the other one is for the actual last drive-in show. So I was like, I kind of want to check that out too.
Yeah.
So, but like you said, it's an art form now that is dying. Like honestly, like as much as like the theater is a big thing, with them putting out movies on the streaming service, I think it's gonna kill the theater. Like I think it already has enough.
I can argue a yes and no with that, because you remember how we talked about Night of the Creeps and we said that it's a good movie and we like it, but it's not a movie that I feel like you rush out to a theater to go see. I don't feel like I think like the streaming thing is beneficial to the, like, I like it, but I don't have to rush out to see it kind of thing. And I think a movie like that is where the streaming really benefits. But say something like the comic book movies, that's definitely a theater experience.
Something like IMAX experience or grandiose.
Exactly.
I would say though, like taking off that concept was when they released King Kong versus Godzilla, I felt like that was a theater worthy movie, but I didn't think Mortal Kombat was.
Really?
Because like if you look at I would say the giant creature features, they're on a grander scale. They're shot for bigger screens. But Mortal Kombat is shot like a fight movie, so that you can watch that anywhere.
Okay, yeah.
I was like, after watching, I'm like, cool. I'm like, I wish I would have got to see Godzilla in the theater, but it's not gonna happen. I got her all the time. She loves watching movies with me, but certain things.
And that's a good example of it. Like you said, it's a fighting movie. It's pretty much contained for the most part in certain scenes. I still think it would hold well in a theater experience.
Absolutely. I mean,
but it's not like theater worthy. Like I think something like how we all saw Batman '89 again in the theater, because you had the Batwing and the buildings. The chase scenes, like everything was like moving into different scenes and had like these like explosions and the chemical scene. Like that's something that like, and the music plays such a huge part in a theater because you got the acoustics and the lighting for a theater atmosphere is for a movie like that just like adds. I don't think a movie like Pulp Fiction exactly is one that you'd have to go see in the theater for exactly.
Love that movie.
But I know I love that movie.
I love Tarantino.
It's fantastic, but I don't think it's like a theater experience type movie, especially now. I mean, before maybe but horror films were totally built for theater.
I mean,
oh my God, it's almost claustrophobic in a way because like a movie like Exorcist, the lights are going down and you're going in, like you're sitting down just listening to this scary music with all this scary imagery and hearing nothing but pessimistic things that you're just like, get me out of here.
Don't go down that corridor. He's right there. She's right there.
Well, I was listening to something. I think it was on NPR. I was listening. I don't know if it was a podcast, but someone had talked about the impact of like social media on entertainment now, because they were saying like back in the day, you didn't really know how things worked as much, but now like you can find behind the scenes footage if you want. Like it's much more accessible. Like you can see actors' lives, So I wonder if that is a like influence to it too a little bit, with like people would just go to a theater and they would just see this grand like story on screen, and it's like the explosions and it's amazing, and they're like the average person, or if you're not in the film industry, like how do they do that, like it just. So I wonder if like how we were just talking about like the modern kind of landscape of media now, like how that's impacting.
I believe a lot of stuff with social media has impacted that. I mean, like it's kind of like how practical effects still hold up well versus CGI. I mean,
I love practical effects.
Me too.
Yeah, I try not. I haven't really. Well, we did one CGI. I guess we did one VFX element for a horror film, 313, that we did. But other than that, like I always try to do practical as much as possible.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it still holds up well, no matter how corny it might age. I know Jeff laughed.
Depending on what it is exactly. Like some of those 80s.
But CGI ages too.
Exactly.
I mean, animation, you can tell. Like, I think, like, I love, like, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I just love it. And I was watching, I forget which one it was, but I was watching it and I was like, okay, yeah, like, this animation, like, back in the, when it came out, it was, like, state of the art. But your eyes either were just so used to seeing the next iteration of animation or CGI or whatever that when I was watching it, I was like, oh, that's kind of, it's like, I could tell a difference. So I was like, wow, okay.
Honestly, it's even worse if you're watching it on 4K because that's when you notice a lot more things.
Oh, yeah.
I got that box set for Lexi, and we're watching, and I'm like, I don't know if I can watch this anymore.
Can we go back to the lower quality? Seriously.
That's the one thing I am noticing with the quality of I guess the digital era, like the 4K is actually showing stuff from the 80s and 90s that your eye wouldn't catch. Like, I can't even watch Back to the Future on the 25th anniversary anymore.
Really?
Because the makeup is so noticeable.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there, I'm like,
it kind of takes you out of it. Yeah.
That's how I felt when I saw Terminator 2 in 4K. Like, I thought Terminator 2 was one of these, like, timeless movies. I mean, it's, 30 years old now or not a little more?
92, so almost 30 years.
Really, like, that movie has, like, hardly any aging to it. But then when I started seeing Arnold in 4K with the makeup appliances, I'm like, oh, man. I finally see the flaws, and I'm like, no, this was, like, my holy grail to be, like, practical effects in your face.
Back to lower quality, hide, mask all the things that we didn't want to notice.
Talking about like really low quality movies getting a 4K release. I have Fulci Lucci's Zombie in 4K.
God.
Yeah, I love the movie because it's straight just ridiculousness. But even with the like low quality of the movie, it actually holds up with the 4K. Like everything is like so over the top that you don't notice the flaws unless you're really, really looking for it.
Being nitpicky. Oh, jeez.
But now they even have CGI costumes and stuff now, and it's become more of the crutch instead of the Band-Aid, as they say. Or
there are full CGI characters, not motion capture work because that's something different, but complete CGI creations.
And it's disappointing like that. Yeah. Like the only time the only thing that pops into my head where it was really effective that it was like for practical reasons and doesn't really show was in Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow, where they got rid of the horseman's head and they had to put a digital collar on the horseman. It's like, maybe now 4K might ruin that for me. But still, I was like, okay, that I understand.
Sure, yeah. I don't think you want to do a practical effect for that.
No. Have like a foot.
That wouldn't hold out so well. No, not exactly.
I remember as a kid thinking, please tell me like they did this practically so I could like do this in my backyard, and it was no, and I was like, oh, bummer.
Disheartening.
Yeah, couldn't do it.
But you had mentioned a film that you were talking about, 313. In fact, in actually 20 minutes, it's going to be dropping on YouTube.
Yeah.
To stream. And who's presenting it? What's the streaming platform?
So it's called Frights. It's an independent, it's a horror channel for independent films. And they reached out to us last week and they wanted to distribute it on the channel. So it's really exciting. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Tell us about the film a little bit.
Yeah, so it's called 313. It's a 1-minute horror film. So it's only a minute long. And basically it is a story about sleep paralysis and kind of the urban legend around the nightmare. So the film came about. There's a studio in Philadelphia called Maestro Filmworks. I've done work with them before, and they have a program called Make Long Story Shorts. So it's basically, I think it was presented a little bit as a challenge for filmmakers to write a script and make a film that's under a minute. And they gave us, it was like 1 location, 2 characters, had to be 1 minute. And my collaborator, Hillary Hannock, she's a female DP in Philly. She does a lot of great work. Around the time that like Maestro had put out this Make Long Story Shorts program, Hillary had found this urban legend around the nightmare. And she was like, I want to make something out of this. And basically it's a story about a girl that like wakes up in the middle of the night and she has like a demon on her chest, and it's kind of like the basis of what a nightmare, the urban legend is.
I know exactly what you're talking about. That's really cool.
Yeah, so at the time I was like, I read it and I was like, this could be a cool concept for like a 1-minute story. So I came up with the script and we pitched it to the executive producer, Chris Mendoza. And he liked it. And we got like a very small budget for it and we just made it. And we put it, the Make Long Story Shorts, it's on an Instagram page because Instagram at the time had that 1-minute limit of video. That's kind of where it came from, I think.
That's cool.
So they uploaded it onto Instagram and we got like 10,000 views. We've got like really great response to it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's crazy, like, you're not knowing what will hit what, like what people will respond to. So it was really cool to see that it kind of got that, reaction, and we put it in film festivals, and then this distribution is kind of the latest part of its journey, I guess. I don't know, but it's really cool. And just the fact that it's a minute, it's like we're like, this is great, it's only a minute long, but I'm glad you guys are liking it and getting scared, know.
That's the beauty about short films, is that we have such a short attention span as humans. I mean, really.
It's so true, though.
It is. That's why, like there is a reason why movies in general should only be an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Right.
It's like, if you really have to exceed that, it's way too long.
Either it's too long or you really have to have a gripping narrative that will keep people in, because our attention spans are dwindling rapidly.
Dude, our cell phones alone are pretty much making I was actually going to pull it out like a
That's what's already killing
it's
our
almost that
imagination.
impulse.
Yeah,
You're like, I need to check.
But it's the whole concept of like, we use our phones more than we probably should. Like, honestly, I just started leaving mine plugged in so I'd stop looking
That's good,
at it.
though. Yeah. I mean, well, everything's on our phone now, right? So, it's
email,
easy.
apps, everything.
Yeah.
Now, may I ask, where did you come up with the title 313?
So, it was just kind of like an arbitrary choice. Like, Hillary and I were talking, and obviously the character wakes up in the middle of the night, so we picked around 3 a.m. because that's like dead time, and
Bewitching hour.
The bewitching hour. So, and we just thought, 3:13, like that sounds cool.
It does.
3 and 13, yeah. And then, so that's where it came from, just kind of the dead time and, the fact that, this character wakes up in the middle of the night. There is an aspect to it, because it's so short, I had to write in like a loop to keep have the story make sense. So there's a little bit of time play. If you guys check it out, you'll see what I mean. But, I was hoping to give the impression of, with a nightmare, sometimes you wake up in the middle and you don't know if it's real. Like, you ever have a nightmare where it feels so real, and then you wake up and you're like, wait, was that real? Was I sleeping? So that was kind of what I was going for with the time play that we have in there. So
awesome.
Now, if only it was called 316 instead of a demon, you got Stone Cold Steve Austin showing up.
Now, there's a sequel for you.
But then you might get the people who click on it and be like, what is this? I was expecting... Or maybe you can get him and be the demon.
Yeah.
You're going to open up a can of whoop ass and wake your ass up, son.
Oh, hell yeah.
Or maybe he's the one sleeping, wakes up, the demon comes in, and then he opens up a can of whoop ass.
Exactly.
Plot twist. Yeah.
Not today, Satan. Oh, hell yeah.
But you also had the idea of possibly expanding that film into possibly a feature length.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it. I think, it's one of those things. So Hillary Hannock and I are close friends, and we are we collaborate on everything. She's an amazing cinematographer. So we're always like, let's make this. So, I think we've thought about taking the short into a longer version, but we got different projects that we're juggling too. So maybe one day, who knows, or if it gets picked up somewhere, I'd love to expand on the story, because one of the reasons too, one of the big elements of the film that was important to us was it's all female. It's a female. The girl sleeping, obviously female. The demon is female, and it's an African American actress, and that was an element of the story that we wanted to focus on. We were trying to flip the script on classic horror, because, at least from what I remember, I'm not a huge horror buff. I love horror, but the films I've seen, the ghost is usually like a white, young white girl with like stringy hair, kind of spooky, we don't see a lot of black ghosts or villains, so we reached out to a filmmaker, an actor friend of ours, to be the demon, and she was open to it, and that's like a really good like creepy background.
Can Thea be in the film?
Yeah, and our friend Free Howard, who is an amazing special effects makeup artist. We were all talking, and she said, she was like, it would be great for African American representation too.
That's awesome.
The demon has natural hair, and we wanted to give her African origins, so it was just an element to us that we thought, like let's really explore this more, and try to make something that is different, and kind of flip the book a little bit on what classic horror villains are like. Try to create some new.
Exactly, and that's perfectly awesome, because that means that it's just another evolution of filmmaking, really. I mean, like you said, it really doesn't get shown a whole lot, and maybe there is like a political narrative to it. I don't know, but
I don't know either.
But I mean, I also am one of those people who I always say, like, whoever auditions or whoever is fit for the part, you just do it.
Well, and that's exactly how it came about. Like, we didn't write it and we weren't like, okay, it has to be like a black. That's not how it came about. Our friend Simone is like, she's like in really good shape, and she's like a bodybuilder. So it was really more of like, she would have a great look for, we were looking for like an animalistic demon type. We were like, okay, who, when the moonlight's shining and this person's like crawling on your bed, you want someone who's going to be like,
menacing.
Menacing, yeah. So that's really where it came from. It's exactly what you said. It's about who you know, who's in your network, and who would be good for it. It wasn't until later on in pre-pro when we were developing that Free kind of was like, hey guys, just FYI, like, as an African American makeup artist, it's always great to have representation, and we just told her, we said, we'll give you free reign on the development of this character. We wanted to be collaborative and open to creating new characters, and I think it just worked out pretty well. Worked out that way. So yeah, it was cool.
And the actress who was experiencing the nightmare is a mutual friend of ours too.
Yes, RJ. Yeah.
Small world. We worked together at the Renaissance Fair like 10 years ago, and she was actually at the 2012 Comic-Con with Chris Hemsworth as the big headliner. She was there when we were there together.
Really?
So we were like, it's been like 9 years since we've seen each other. It's been crazy, and you're in this short film.
Small world.
Yeah. It's great stuff. And then you have a film that's currently going through the circuit right now in terms of film festivals around the Pennsylvania area and outside, and that's a film called Your Reckless Heart.
Yep. Yeah. So Your Reckless Heart is a short drama. It's about a like oil painter who's going through a breakup, and she has really bad creative block. And it's not until something happens that she's able to like break through her creative block and get through to the other side, and that's her journey in the film. And this came about, we actually shot it like 2.5 years or 3 years ago now. It was a long time. The film had a really interesting like post-production path. Like it started out as a contest for a music video, so a submission for a music video contest, and there's a songwriter called Glenn Hansard. He's an Irish singer-songwriter.
Who did Once.
He did Once, yeah. And he opened a contest to just make a music video for the song called Reckless Heart. And it's like a really melancholy, like, breakup song, but I just wrote a treatment for it. And our friend Becca, her dad, has this beautiful studio in Kennett Square. So everything kind of like came together really nicely. And we shot the film and put it into the contest. It didn't win. Like, we didn't get picked up, and we were like, we didn't even get like honorable mention or anything, which was fine. But then they were like, this I guess his like management was like, oh, you can post it on YouTube and say like, this was my entry for the singing contest. And I was like, no. I got stubborn because I thought it was really beautifully shot. Like, not even because I wrote it or anything. Like, I just thought it was really beautiful. And I was like, no, like,
you were proud of your work.
I was like, let's make this something like a standalone piece, So what we ended up doing was, I was like, we need to do something to differentiate it a little bit. So I reached out to a poet in Westchester for some poetry verses, and I wrote like a voiceover. So we laced like a poetry narrative to it to kind of give the piece a little bit more of like a narrative tone. So it wasn't just like, like to music, and it took us a long time because we had to work with the management, with Glenn Hanser's management company, to get like rights to it. Right. And it just like took a long time, but we were determined. I was like, we have to finish this. We have to get it to, and we got the clearance, and we put it into film festivals, and it's been picked up in 4 so far, which is nice. So just another another small project that we did, and just great to see the response to it. It almost wasn't anything, but we're just really stubborn, and I was like, we need to make something of this. I was like,
just go for it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, I mean, you pour. We shot it in a day, and it's 5 minutes, but you pour so much into it. It was a very personal story for me, and it's about it's based on balancing artistic pursuits with your romantic relationships. 'Cause sometimes that doesn't always work out and it doesn't even have to be an artistic profession, but sometimes when, someone's in a certain profession and it takes a lot of their time or focus, and it's hard to have a healthy relationship. I think anyone can relate to that. So that was kind of also, I've gotten really nice comments from people that have said like, wow, like I really relate to that, or I was really moved by that. And that's one of the greatest things about filmmaking, is when you make that connection with someone, or that emotional, you move someone emotionally, that's why I enjoy doing it. So,
well, sure, it has substance, and that's what's going to give it legs and live on a lot longer. Yeah. Like I noticed that if you don't feel like some sort of connection, or if you're just not totally entertained by it,
right,
it's just kind of like another wash.
Yeah, exactly.
So, no, I totally understand where you're coming from with it.
Colin, you and I know about this.
Yeah, we
During college, everyone's like, you're not going to be able to do this, not going to be able to do this, but finals came around. Damn it, we made our short Batman film.
We did. And passed our finals and graduated.
Did. Long hours during the night. I think it was like till 4 a.m. I think we were doing that shoot because we had to shoot at night, and this is the only day that we could do it. And skeleton crew, everybody's exhausted, everybody's tired. We did the few takes. We almost did like the Ed Wood thing. Okay, just get one shot and then move on.
Kind of, yeah. We also had like a P2 card that had like no footage, so every shot had to count.
Yep. I've been there.
Yeah.
It's like, thank God they like changed that.
Exactly. But it's really inspiring just to hear like you have something you're passionate about and you just want to go for it. You want to construct a budget. You want to be able to get your crew together. And Hillary, she also shot the film, right? Your Reckless Heart. She did, okay.
Yep, Hillary.
So she was your cinematographer?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And she's been my DP for all of my narrative work. Astronomer was the first film we ever made together, and that's a historical fantasy film. It's like an adaptation of a Walt Whitman poem. And it's about, the poem is I Heard the Learned Astronomer, and it's basically about a student is in an astronomy class, and it's like really like stuffy and boring, and the teacher's like, this is astronomy, this is the world, blah, blah, blah. And in the poem, Walt Whitman, because as a poet, he was all about, and that time period, it was all about like going out into nature and self-reliance and self-actualization, a lot of the themes in poetry at the time. So it's not until this character goes out into the world and they experience nature and space for themselves that they actually learn about the world. That's kind of the theme. I guess the underlining theme is sometimes, you don't have to be in a classroom to learn everything. You have to go out and do it yourself, or figure it out for yourself.
That's a lot of like what they taught us in film school. Was you can like learn in the class, but until you actually get hands-on experience.
Exactly.
And they encouraged it all the time. They said, we have your projects, but get out and do some other stuff.
Exactly.
And that's true. I mean, because like you're always so limited in a classroom. They never teach you like everything you really want to learn in any sort of school. Really,
it's what book smarts versus street smarts.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she was DP on that, and then 313 and Your Reckless Heart, and then we're actually in post production for a documentary called The Openers that we worked on over the last year and a half. It follows a aspiring stand-up comedian who's trying to like break into the Philly comedy scene. So we followed him, like, we did some interviews. His name's Carl Brahaney. He's awesome. Really, he's a good friend of ours. And we followed him in, like, this was before COVID hit, obviously, but we were, like, going in, like, dive bars and, like, you know, because it's all about, like, the premise that we were, you know, he wanted to create a story about what it's like breaking into the comedy scene, you know, and he wanted to document it. So he reached out to us, which was awesome. So we had like a group of comedians that we were interviewing and following, and then COVID hit. So obviously, like, we weren't following anywhere, so we weren't going anyplace. So the story is kind of, it's about beginnings. You know, it's like a lot of times for many comedians, you know, you kind of see them at the top, like the zenith of their career, where they have the Netflix special, or they're, you know, they're kind of working their way up, but not many people know what it's like to break into that scene, or they might not see it, you know. So he wanted to kind of not only create a story of his journey going into comedy scene, but also tell a story of what it's like for someone who literally just, I think 3 months before he reached out to us, he was like, I'm going to pursue stand-up comedy because I want to. So it's like really very, very early on. It's like, you know, are his jokes even good? You know, like what is it like being rejected or having people call you out on a stage where they're like, oh, your jokes aren't that good, heckled, or what's it like, you know, relationships between your peers, you know what I mean? There is a group of, like, a comedy scene, and, you know, it's like any artistic profession, you know, you're gonna it's just all these different elements. So we followed, and then also, like, how do you stay at a artistic passion when something like COVID hits, you know?
That's a very good narrative to talk about.
Yeah, so he kind of, and also, like, the protests were going on. Like, 2020 was just, like, a dumpster fire. So we kind of told him at the time, we were like, look, like, because he, you know, he was very politically inclined or invested. So he was, like, going down to the protests, and he has all this found footage. And, you know, we told him, like, keep recording. Like, we can't be there with you, or, you know, we're not in these, you know, areas with you, or we're not at home with you while you're, like, writing your jokes or whatever. But we said, like, keep taking found footage because we'll use it in the project. And, you know, really cool. So our hope is to kind of just share that story of that first year and a half of him, you know.
Oh, I'm sure you can. I mean, it's all about how you piece it together. Yeah. So, I mean, no matter what you get on camera, you'll always have something. It's just, you know, it's like how I heard that a true film's never really truly finished. Oh, it's only abandoned.
Exactly.
And that's, like, the best thing I ever heard.
I think any script, I think any art piece, you know, painting, I think you could go back and change everything. You know, you could keep working at it, but you have to be able to step away and be like, okay, like, you know, like you said, it is abandoned at one point. But I think any creative, artistic person will tell you, like, I've had scripts or drafts that are in development that I'm like, it's done. And then I'll be like, oh, wait, I should change that. Like, you know, it's like,
maybe this person can do this.
And I'm like, no, like, stop. Like, it's time to move on to, like, whatever, you know, production or something.
The best work written is the ones that are rewritten.
Yeah. Oh, well, that too. Yeah. Yeah. I also think, too, it's
unless they're Star Wars and then they do the re-edits and all that other.
I always say, too,
That's a menace.
It's so hard, I think, as a creator, like, you know, when you're showing or giving your work, like, it's part of you, you know what I mean? But, like, I always remind myself, like, the art itself exists in and of itself. It doesn't care as much as the creator does. The art is out there, and it's meant to impact people. So it's like you just have to let it do its thing, for better or for worse. So.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
It's totally also a team effort. It might start with one person, but
definitely.
I mean, I've told Jeff and John this, that for any sports people that know, I always compare it because I'm a big football fan, but I always say, like, filmmaking is a lot like football in a lot of ways. Like, you as the director or the head coach, and your script is the blueprint for the plays. Your main actor is the quarterback or the main star on the field, and your stadium is the set. Your assistant coaches are your DPs and your, you know, like your crew in general, and the actors are the players on the field. Yeah. Then you got, you know, the opposing team, which is the antagonist. And, you know,
no, I think it's a great analogy, and
so it's, you know, and in order to win, like anybody who knows who's actually played it, like the three of us are, you got to play as a team, and you got to be like really unified to do it, and you got to put trust, like you trust, you know, your cinematographer that you've used for years, and that's so important because trust and reliability and the bounce back ideas, and you also have to take a step back from ego and say, well, maybe I want this shot, but if they say, I'm telling you, this, like, use a Dutch angle or something, or shoot at, you know, a low angle for this, it's going to be better. You hit it right, the nail on the head. You're so right, because it is a team. It is a collaboration. You know, as a director or whatever writer, like I go to the festivals and we talk about the projects, but there's like 10, 20 people all working together to make the one thing. You know what I mean? It's not just one person. Right. And like you said, like it's all about trust and finding a group of people that you can work with. I also say it's finding a group of people that'll be honest with you too, because you can be on a team of people that if they're just yes men, you're gonna get crap. So the one thing I love about Hillary and our working relationship is that I think because we do have that trust, we're also very honest with each other. There have been times when we're like clashing a little bit, but it's you know, like it's good creativity. Exactly. It also goes like the same way with actors. Like you might have, like, people don't realize that everything in a script is not always what you get in the final movie. Yeah. It's like I could go back to Empire Strikes Back when Leia sees Han getting ready to get frozen, and she says, I love you, and he was supposed to say, I love you back, and they're like, nah, this just isn't working. And they were like, Harrison, what works best for you? And he goes, I know. Yeah. And now look, that's become become the thing. And it's those great moments like that too, like if they are unplanned, or, you know, sometimes when we're on, what we've done on our projects is, you know, sometimes you press record a little bit early for a take because it's very natural for, you know, the actors interacting, or, you know, just little things like that, or when they are unplanned like that, that's even better. But those moments are really cool. And like you said, like nothing in a script is always finalized. Like this is the way it has to be delivered. Like I look at performances like from Nicole Kidman in a film called Rabbit Hole. There's this intense emotional scene between her and Aaron Eckhart when their child just died in a car wreck, and they did the scene 25 different times because Nicole Kidman brought something different every take, and it made it a lot more exciting for the director, but also challenging because, wow, we have these different takes on this scene, how it can be delivered emotionally, which one should we use? And then there's that famous opening scene with The Social Network, where it's between Jesse Eisenberg and Rooney Mara, where they did the scene like 99 different takes before. 99 different takes before. Oh my goodness, why did I just black on his name? The director for The Social Network, David Fincher. He 99 different takes on how they wanted to do it, and it just led to one thing to another. So nothing is ever set in stone. How a line should be delivered, how a scene should be carried out, because that's up to the actors and the team effort. I mean, you can like direct an actor to say, maybe put a little more like emotion into this, or like, can you do this for me, like just this once, but don't make it absolute for me, because you're really not supposed to. Sometimes it's a little hard for me because of like being an actor. So I kind of know, and especially if you're an actor and a writer, you kind of know the emotion already in the character. And sometimes it is a little like, no, you got to say it like this, but it's like you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. And I don't think that's the role of the director, is to be like, it has to be this way. No, like we are navigating the ship, right? We're trying to create this world and these scenes and help, you know, the actors and every part of the crew member do their best work. Exactly. That's the role of the director, in my opinion. I was just going to say, you want to bring the best out of everybody. It's very much a leadership position. It's very much a last man standing sort of thing. It's kind of like you pretty much go down with the ship if it doesn't take off. I mean, there have definitely been moments where like I've fought for a vision I had, you know, because from a like artistic standpoint, I had, you know, I was like, no, the scene needs to be blocked this way, or, you know, I fought for those moments, sure. But as far as like working with actors or directing actors, I don't think it's about being like, you have to say it this way, or, you know, you have to let the actor like bloom, you know what I mean? Like they have to be able to bring this character to life, and, you know, but I definitely agree. I mean, there's times where I've said, can you try it like like this.
Yeah.
And then let's just see how it goes. And then you do a couple takes of it and see how they feel with it. And if they don't feel comfortable with it, then it may, because it may feel that way to me, but to them it may not, and it may not show. But if it does work, you obviously take what the best take is, and you go from there. And then sometimes it could be like a combination of things, like, hey, I'm making you look better, or you're making me look better, one of those things. Like how, or if you're just working with the director and the actor together, like when Donald Pleasance, like when John, you were talking about the different takes and stuff, and in Halloween, Donald Pleasance said to John Carpenter, now I can play this two different ways. When Michael Myers got shot, I could play this like, oh my God, he's gone, or I could play this as
I knew this was going to happen. Yeah.
And here, they wound up using both.
Yeah,
he has like the initial reaction, and then it was like, wait a minute, and that was awesome. It's like just like that's like the perfect bookend to that movie. That like, oh my God, what? And then you know what? In the back of my mind, I knew this was gonna happen.
Really, really great stuff.
Yeah, so much of it too is about filmmaking is about like problem solving too, or like you said, like if something's not working, Oh, was that the train?
Just keep going.
Hold for train. No, I'm kidding. I mean, like, I was even thinking, like, about 313. We had to, like, adjust some things in post that ended up really helping the story. Like, I had envisioned a certain shot that, and for me, this is, like, a learning curve as a filmmaker. When I was in the editing booth with the editor, he had put everything on the timeline, and we were reviewing it. And this one shot that in my shot list, and as I was writing things, it like made sense in my head. But the way we shot it, it just like it didn't fit with the rest of the film, and it really stuck out in a bad way. And I was like, well, crap! Like, how do we fix this? Because it's like the big, like it was kind of not supposed, like it was kind of supposed to be a reveal of the monster, and and the editor actually came up with a really great solution. I don't want to like give anything away, but I guess my point is like that's an example of like, sometimes those moments that really kind of make a film or help a film, it's not exactly on the paper. It's something that might happen on the set, or, we were fortunate that in the editing process, we were able to come up with a solution, but like it was a little bit, what I had written down or envisioned was different than what ended up in the final film, but it for the best. Like it worked out what we came up with. That's so
great. And even when you try something different, it becomes innovative then.
Yeah.
Like Rocky, the director John Avildsen, he said he had no interest in it because it was a boxing movie, and he had seen boxing movies before, but then he found out it was really more of a love story with boxing in it. And then when it came to the boxing scene, he was like, well, most of the time it's just, like a close-up of the faces and the punches are thrown, and then it's a wide shot of just them in the ring throwing punches. But then he talked to the DP, and then they came up with the Steadicam. I believe that DP was the one who came up with the Steadicam originally.
And he's from this area. He's from like Chester County.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, that makes sense because they did actually film it in Philly. When they did.
Yeah. But yeah, you're exactly right.
But when they did the ring shot, they said that's when like the Steadicam was really used heavily. And it always fascinated me because there was like Steadicam images in The Exorcist.
Okay.
But I found out they rigged like the whole camera to like go upstairs, like the whole thing. It
wow.
Yeah, and I saw the behind the scenes where it was like wires and just this incredible contraption. I was like, thank God for the Steadicam,
Don't know how much, like, the crews were like, we're done.
Enough
we can't do this anymore.
I'm wondering how many boxing films did he see before Rocky, because I can't think of too many. I don't know.
There really weren't a whole lot, but at least some that were memorable. I don't even know if Raging Bull came out at that time.
That's what I was going to say.
I think that came after Rocky.
Okay.
But still, I can't see Scorsese even... Because there really wasn't anything like, I mean, Rocky was like all over the ring, they were doing the circles, but that was so crucial because it wasn't just two fighters going at it and it's a shot at the title. It was, he just wanted to survive, the fight, because he's like, I'm a bum. This is the world-class professional athlete. Like, I mean, that's like if you and I were to go in a ring with Mike Tyson, John, we're done. And
survive 10 seconds, maybe, if that.
And here's this dude's doing the whole 15 rounds. It's crazy.
Yeah. All I do was punch a couple bags of meat,
So it just made that effect more. I mean, maybe at the time people didn't really realize it, but to filmmakers, it's like, wow, that, because you see the faces and like them sweating and they're tired, and you get it from like every angle. It was like so effective that cutting back and forth just wouldn't have done it, because you just get the cut and it just kind of takes you out of it. You know, it didn't feel natural and fluid.
Right. That movement really, keeps you in it.
So that's where like all that little stuff comes in. Like, it's so important. Like you said, it's what happens on set, and sometimes it's what happens after. And the editing will also do, like, I mean, you could edit subliminal messages or whatever. Like in Fight Club,
sure.
Like it was important where they put the flashes of Brad Pitt in, like for here and there, and that's obviously a post thing. That may not have been in the script, but somebody said, hey, let's put this in, and it's kind of like, oh shit, did I just see Brad Pitt?
How about those cigarette burns in the top corner?
But it's like you said too about like leaving your ego at the door and being willing to figure out a way to come to a solution, or, you know, because like with 313, like I could have been like, no, I want that shot in there, but like it didn't look good, you know what I mean? It didn't work. So the editor's solution was like perfect, and I was like, all right, let's do this, you know what I mean? Like, you have to think about what's best for the film or what's best for the story sometimes.
It's always the final product, not what's best for you.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, and that's what I think people get lost in, is that they don't realize it's the product.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like how we were talking a little bit about the social media stuff earlier, and how we're getting like so desensitized, and political correctness is playing in a big part of things, but it's like, you got to remember that the product is what we're going after.
Right.
Like, one of the big things we talk about, especially as fans, is how the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie stands out, because it was just, they made a product, that's what it was, and then families kind of complained about, oh, it was too dark, they used their weapons, you can't do that anymore, and then they came out with a second one, and even though we find it entertaining and fun,
it's very kid-friendly.
It's kid-friendly, it's watered down, it's not the same, and it's like, I'll put on the first one any day of the week, and I think like 90% of fans will say the same thing.
Yeah.
Because the secret of the what?
Yeah. Because it's the product that stands out. It's always going to be the product that has legs. It's like the same argument I have with awards. I mean, accolades are nice, but say there's somebody like Robert Englund or Vincent Price, who really don't get any credit besides from the fans for like creating iconic characters, like even Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi. You know, they're iconic for Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, Freddy Krueger. I mean, Vincent Price is like every villain.
He is every villain.
And it's like, do they have awards? No, but what they do is what lives on, and that's what's inspiring all of us.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, I mean, the awards, are nice, and even the nominations itself is a huge honor. But if they're not going to live on, and if you just say, hey, I got an Oscar, it's like, well, who cares?
I was doing research for a writing gig I was doing, and I can't remember who it was, but about awards, I read that back in the day, I think it was like the early, maybe 1920s or 30s, the actors were really unhappy with their studios at the time, and there was a threat that they might unionize. So a producer, I cannot remember the name, but he, the story goes, is that he created the Academy Awards or the award ceremonies so that the actors would have something to compete against each other for, and that they wouldn't unionize, that they wouldn't team up together. So that's, I wish I could give like a clear like resource, but I had read it somewhere and I was like, that's really interesting, because it's like, if that's true, you know, you're like, oh, okay, so like, because it has become like a machine in and of itself, like award season, you use it for, you know, from a women's standpoint, it's like people are using it to promote fashion designers, and it's like a business in and of itself. But I had read that somewhere, and I was like, if that's true, like, it's really interesting and kind of clever and sneaky from the studio standpoint, where they're like, oh crap, these guys are going to union against us. Like, we got to give them something to distract them. Here's a shiny award.
Build your ego. Like, they knew their weakness. It's like your ego.
Exactly.
Here you go.
Oh my god, that's so funny.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if
think you're better than me.
Yeah. But no, I mean, you're right about award shows, and you know, like, it's great to be like get recognition for your work, but again, you know, it's like, what's gonna have that longevity, you know?
It's the fans and the generation, really. It's you know, it's kind of like how the Mona Lisa is still this iconic painting throughout all these years, but it's like, does it have an award?
Right.
No,
Or-
it's just
It's just a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
it's-
Van Gogh was like destitute, and he wasn't famous during his time.
He got
was
famous
poor,
when he died.
But and I mean that happens so much with art and stuff. It's not until the artist is dead that they like blow up, and you're like,
Or how
wait.
we were talking about Monster Squad.
That was
And
yeah.
that was another one that like nobody gave two shits about it. And then all of a sudden, years later, people went back and recognized it and said, yo, this is a good movie.
Yeah. Time and rediscovery. Yeah, just right place at the right time.
And again, that was another one of those situations where maybe the box office wasn't the right place for it, but if it hit streaming right away, it might have taken off a little more.
Who knows? It probably could have gotten a theatrical release if it was that popular in terms of streaming, which has happened before. I know Spielberg's first movie, Duel, that was a TV movie. And because it was so popular, it actually got a limited theatrical release. And that was essentially his audition tape for Jaws.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's another thing that makes me feel like he's so hypocritical about the Netflix stuff. And I feel like his ego has like gotten so overblown, because Steven Spielberg, like you said, he made a TV movie. Like, so what's the difference between a TV movie and what you do that goes out in a theater?
Right.
It's still art. And that's my problem. And then on top of it, it was like nobody gave Spielberg really any credit for the longest time. And now all of a sudden he's Mr. Oscars and, head of the Academy or whatever. And now it's like, oh, well, these Netflix movies.
Greatest director of all time.
Yeah, it's like, dude, really? So like you don't want anybody to grow
That's
or
so
like
funny,
start and STEM somewhere?
I
I was
never
like,
put that
that's...
correlation together until you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why I was like, wow, it just like blew my mind hearing it from him that he's like, no, screw you Netflix guys. It's like, dude, that's another platform for people to grow. We have so many more filmmakers nowadays, and we have so much access to equipment and things to do on our own, and it's a little more cheaper.
A little bit more accessible. Yeah.
I remember Jeff and I, we met Nick Castle, who's known for playing Michael Myers in Halloween. And he's friends with John Carpenter and went to USC and did film school stuff with him. And I think he was like more impressed that I was talking film work with him instead of like, oh, Michael Myers.
Right, yeah.
Because he actually like held up the line
That's
to
awesome.
talk to me about it. Like even his manager or someone was like, Nick, you got it? And he's like, oh. So it was like
we're talking shop here, dude.
Yeah.
Okay?
So it was like a moment I'll never forget, and I was like so grateful that he did that. And I was more like, oh my god.
Yeah.
I'm important.
Yeah. It was like VIP,
Yeah. That's awesome though.
And he was saying the same thing. Like he said, you guys have access to like so much easier equipment. Like Final Cut Pro is on the computer. You don't have to worry about a linear editor. You've got the digital cameras that are
digital.
like everything's fantastic. And like even though there is a certain look about 35 millimeter film that digital doesn't grasp, we still can make a great movie that can live forever with what we got.
Yeah.
And because money's such a huge issue, like with anything, like John was talking about how he wants to make Splinter, but yet, as you know, especially now with COVID, that funding and like finding bankers is hard to do. Like you can't just get everything from a bank.
Right.
You usually go from like the small mom and pop shops, and then you got to make sure that whatever you get back, they get back and a little sum.
Yeah.
And that's how it was. I don't know what it's like now because of COVID coming in. Maybe you have a better idea because you were filming during COVID.
With funding?
Yeah.
So, I mean, for the openers, we did do like a crowdfunding campaign. So we had some money kind of up front, and we also had like private funders that we were working with. But yeah, I mean, like you said, like, I don't really think there's a rule book now. I mean, it's, and again, like, I think it really just depends. Like, you can start small too. That's kind of been my philosophy or whatever approach to it. Like I even tell Hillary, like with our work, like, everything I've done to this point has just been short films. I'd love to do a feature. I'd love to do, more impactful short films. But you gotta start somewhere. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you gotta kind of gauge your expectations. And I always say with our work, like, I always want to do better than what I did before. Like I always want to put out something better, whether it's a larger budget or a better crafted film, whatever that means. Or
maybe even try to make a better film with a smaller budget, which would be more challenging too.
Yeah. And the funding part too, like like, because like I said, like I'm a self-taught filmmaker, I'm kind of navigating it as I go. That's a learning curve too. And I think also it has to do with mindset. I think your mindset's important too. I've worked on a film. I was like AD, and the girl who made it, she was the writer and actor. It was her first kind of project, but she was able to raise like 20 grand for it because it was her mindset. She was like, let's raise money for this. Let's find funders, but that's her first, I'm doing air quotes. It's her first big project, so it's different for everyone. I think, if you approach it with a business mindset that, if you do want to get a return or you're going to have funders, that's one way to approach it. Or, I think it just depends on the person. If you just want to make something for fun, make something just make it. Get together with your friends, find a camera, just make it. That's, I guess, the great thing about film is, it's a large spectrum. You can do what you want with it. But the money side of things is always going to be a challenge. I'm still figuring it out myself.
It's money, yeah.
But
you want to look good and you want to be able to afford what you can and what you can pay for.
It's so important too to have the look of it, at least like make it not so cheap. It's like John Carpenter did with Halloween, where he said like most of the budget was put into like the best film reels and the best lenses. And lenses, what people don't realize, are such a huge part of making your film look totally crystal clear. I mean, you never want to skip on lenses.
And sound. You don't want to skip on sound, because that will like make or break your project.
And even lighting too.
Lighting, I
mean, as you do like a light scene, a night scene, and you have an LED light, it's not going to work.
Right.
I mean, LEDs are only for like certain scenes and cerern times of the day, certain angles. But then you got your basic inkies and tweenies and like your big boy kits and stuff like that.
Kinos and
So, yeah, and then your sound, like lavaliers. Oh my God, they can be a pain in the ass to work with. So it's like, can you use a shotgun microphone? Yeah, you can, but what if you get a train? Like you just had,
I was having a similar conversation like this with Hillary, because I'm doing a video spot for work and for my full-time job, and we have lines, and so we were talking about camera choices, and I was like, it dawned on me, I was like, wait, like I need to have sound for this, and I'm like, it's a very, very like bare bones arrangement. Like my job is great, but we don't have like a production budget or crew or anything, so we're just kind of going for this. But I'm like, okay, how am I going to film this and capture sound? And it's like one or two people maybe behind the camera. So like you said, at first I was like, well, maybe we can do lavs, and then I was like, no, like it's just going to be a pain in the ass. And then we have like the shotgun mic that we're going to work with. But yeah, it's exactly what you said. It's like fitting something into, you got to find like what works in the puzzle, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Finding that puzzle piece and, gauging your expectations of the quality and all that stuff. So, yeah.
And you don't want it to suffer at all. So it's always better to be patient, just try to figure it out.
Yeah.
Even though you got like, I got to go at like, 3 hours, and it's like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, like all the hard work with film or production is done in pre-production. Like, we always, when we're working on a project, we try to, get everything down to the detail as much as possible in the pre-production process, so that when you get to set, you can execute smoothly, because there's always going to be problems. There's always going to be things that come up. But if you have have your plan and, you have your shot list and your, just have everything planned out beforehand, it's going to go a lot smoother when you get to the production phase. So
I say the same thing. And I know like when we were in school, it was like almost impossible to like take extra equipment, because like somebody else might have been renting it, or maybe you might not have gotten what you got for that day. So you just kind of work with what you got, like you said. But it's always beneficial to have extras just in case, because a light bulb may go out, the light may drop, and you need tools, you need a screwdriver, you need to like just change things.
I almost lost the whole location on a shoot.
Really?
So
we had that.
Yeah,
we did.
Park.
Oh, we did. Yes.
The film's called Block. It's a short film. You saw it.
Oh yeah.
It's an awesome film. It's about a young girl who's coming to terms with being gay and how she decides to share her coming out story with her family. Okay. Of course, like things go wrong, and but it's a very heartwarming, like it's a comedy, and I was assistant director on it, and I helped kind of with the pre-pro as well. Hillary shot it. Plug for Hillary.
Hillary does everything.
Yeah. But I remember we did a 6-day shoot. It's a feature film. It's like a 43-minute film. And everything was going pretty well. Like we almost got rained out one day, but we were able to work around that. It was like an exterior shot. We woke up to like downpour rains. We were like, of course, but the skies cleared, so that was fine. But on the last day, it was like the craziest thing. We were working through our day, and our last location was this like coffee shop, and we were shooting inside and then in the front of it, and then our last scenes were upstairs. It was like this really cool spot in Westchester, like where the bottom half was the coffee shop, and then they had this like space that they used upstairs for like art shows or like meetings, or it's just like any sort of use. And Carrie had gotten like a verbal agreement with the owner, like she reserved the day. So I don't know, there must have been a communication breakdown, because I just remember there was a guy there that was sitting at the counter, because they were still, I guess the agreement was that they were going to remain open for business while we shot. Because
that happens a lot.
Yeah, which was fine. Like it was great. And this guy, he was a little bit arrogant. Kind of pissed me off a little bit. He's like, we were talking, and he's like, I guess it came up that we were going to shoot upstairs later in the day, and he's like, you can't shoot up there. There's a meeting going on up there. And he's like, you know how it goes with filmmaking. Like sometimes it just, you have to find another location. And I was like, excuse me, what? Like, I kind of went into like mama bear mode. And so my point is that this happened like 2 or 3 hours before we were supposed to go to that location to shoot. And this guy was kind of acting like, he was like, no, you're not going to have it. Like, this meeting's going to go on. So we were able to contact the owner of the store, and, it all worked out. But it was just like one of those moments where it was like, oh shit, like.
Did he have any clue what was going on? Did he know anything about this?
He didn't know about the film. He claimed to be a filmmaker himself, which I thought was very strange, because I was like, dude, like, if you're a filmmaker, then why are you, like...
Not supportive.
You know what we're going through right now.
Yeah, it was a weird exchange, and, luckily, I was like, we're not giving up this location. Like, you reserved it, you worked something out with the owner. Call the owner and say, they can have their meeting downstairs while we're upstairs. And that's what ended up happening, and it was fine. But
there you go.
It was a weird exchange, and I just remember being like, I just went into mama bear mode.
I'm not doing this with you.
No, we're going to figure this out. But I kind of totally forget why we went on that tangent. But that was just an example of,
losing locations.
Or just I guess, unexpected things that can happen.
Yeah,
that's what we're talking about.
We just pulled together as a crew, and we were like, okay, like, for this, it was a house party scene is what it was for, and we were like, okay, like, we have this backup location, but it was literally like up the block from base camp, from like where we had all of our equipment and everything. So I was kind of like pushing. I was like, no guys, like, we locked in this location, we'll work this out, we'll figure it out. So, and we did. But
that's good.
Yeah,
all for the better. That's right. There we go. We had the amusement park. I'll never forget that for Batman, because the film we shot was Batman: The Day the Clown Cried, which is based on The Killing Joke. Mm-hmm. And there's the big climactic amusement park scene. And there was a water park, a shut down water park not too far from the campus of DeSales University. And we were so excited to shoot this because the owner was really cool. He was there. However, I think the problem was the outlets would not support the power for our film equipment. So, we can't film this without lights.
And they said they were going to turn it on for us.
Oh.
And we were like, can you turn it on? and he was like, no.
I can't really do that. Well, that kind of screws us, man.
We were like, well, we thought you could.
It's dark outside. It's already got like a creepy ambiance, which is what the graphic novel goes for. Mm-hmm. It's run by the Joker. So we had to basically run to the drawing board, and we figured, okay, the small black box theater would just change the script around.
Yeah. And it worked out, too, because that character is, like, theatrical.
It ended up working out really well, yes.
In some ways, it actually worked out better.
I think it did, yeah. The stage box already had lights to work with, which was great. So we didn't have to provide too many of our own lights because we already had the theater lights working. We did go to one of the theaters, one of the stages, and it was actually our Act 3 production of Little Mermaid. So we had some of the sets on the stage right now. We worked around that, and we're like, no,
we got told no about it because they were like,
did.
oh, the Little Mermaid sets here, and Disney is all like, oh, no, you can't. And we're like, you can't even fucking tell.
Oh my god!
I mean, it was just like sea anemone and just like all sorts of colorful type stuff, and we were like, all right, well, we had footage too, and we just like, okay, I guess.
We're doing the outtakes. We filmed it for the outtakes pretty much, so you can see it there. I know when you do a kids production for theater, you can't do Disney scripts, so there's always dozens of off-brand scripts that are like Little Mermaid, but the plot's different, the character names are different, there's no music, and you have to come up with your own music, or vice versa. So.
Yeah, Disney's like
it wasn't
really
even
weird
a real
about...
Disney production. It was some off-brand Disney production.
Yeah, Disney's really weird about stuff like that, from what I heard. But
copywriting and shit.
But like I said, it really worked out a hell of a lot better than like using because it looked like a little bit more of like a rundown community theater then, and we were able to take those old chairs that we had, and then we like trashed them, like homeless people were in there and threw them around, or they just had a riot in there like the last day.
Oh yeah.
And I know like the big thing that I keep hearing about that is we had a chalkboard, and we like had a checklist for the Joker, like he's like flipping the theater, and like one was like tacks on the seats, exploding hand dryers, and like all sorts of like stupid crap. And people said, yo, that little thing right there, they're like, that's perfect.
So it really did work out in the end.
Yeah, well, even to the actors, like we were supposed to get a couple actors to play Joker and Harley Quinn, and then we couldn't get them, and
one person backed out.
And the best part was they didn't even tell us. I said like, hey, I heard your schedules are busy, but I need to know because we're gonna start filming this, and nothing. They just ghosted on us.
That happened to me on a project too, and we had to find a replacement within like the same day, and we were able to.
That's good.
But like the actor, I think, at the beginning of the day, he did a couple scenes, and then he like hurt his arm or something and like disappeared, and we were like, we have to find an actor. Luckily, the scenes that he had shot, he was wearing a hood. So I think some of his face was covered, so that when the replacement that we found was like very similar build, hair color, everything, and his scenes were without a hood, so we were able to make it work.
Okay.
But I remember that day it was like we were like on Facebook like, we need an actor like ASAP, emergency, like show up at this place in Philly, because we just were like, we got to find someone, and luckily someone was available, and they were awesome.
That's
but
really
like. When those things happen, it's just independent film,
Oh yeah,
like, it's awful. It sucks, but it happens.
Well, on top of that, a lot of people don't realize like how difficult filming actually is.
Yeah.
Like an actor thinks you just go, it's an easy day, and it's not.
And it's repetitive.
It's very repetitive.
If you're outside, you're dealing with the elements.
Yeah.
It can be stressful and emotional draining.
Yeah.
Like you said, like with the problems if you don't have prepared equipment.
Right. Yeah. Or if like, because I've been on some sets where like the crew, we just like all get along and it's amazing. And I've been on sets where you don't have that like synergy or, and that happens. That's normal. It's fine. Yeah. But that can impact the productivity, I think, of a production too.
Oh, absolutely. And it goes back to how I heard, I think it was John Carpenter who said, and even Tarantino has said, like, it's a young man's game, but I think they limit themselves now to what they do because of how it can be just, like, so stressful and emotional draining. There are some guys who just crank them out, like Scorsese, but, like, how many of his films are actually really that good?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes I feel like he has, like, what you said, the yes men that...
Oh, really?
They just, like, put them together and then... Because, like, not everything is, like Raging Bull or what's it, the Last Comic Standing or whatever.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Or like Casino or The Departed. Like none of them are like all stand out.
I love The Departed.
Even Tim Burton in a way. Like he's had like Dumbo and like Nobody Knows About Big Eyes and Planet of the Apes. It's like they're not those standout films, and it just becomes like if we all just take our time. Because especially those veteran filmmakers, they know the hardships of making a film. But I've even heard Tim Burton say, like, you think once you make a big budget film and you go through all the headaches and everything,
Mm-hmm.
it gets better. And he said, really, it doesn't. It's
Oh my
always
God.
a challenge.
It's
He said,
just-
no matter what, it will always be a challenge.
Yeah, you really have to love the process, because it doesn't matter whether you're working on a small indie film set or, like you said, a big budget. It's the same process, and it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be grueling.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the process of filmmaking, it's the same. It's just on a larger scale, you know.
Yeah.
So
I think the casual actor knows what they're getting into, especially when it comes to film. They have an awareness that they're in for a long day, a long haul. But the casual film watcher, like on the couch or in the big screen, they think,
they have
They
no
have
idea.
no
how long
clue.
would you film this movie in, like, what, a week?
Right,
Like,
they have no idea.
we didn't film this in a week. It was like 2 months, man.
I was going to say, a minute could be a month.
Mm-hmm.
Literally.
It could be.
It could be 30 days
One tiny
for 1 minute.
Well,
2-minute scene,
yeah.
2 days probably.
For 313, I mean, it's a minute film, but it took us, I think, 6 hours to shoot. I mean, and that's not even that long. Like, we did one day, and we had 3 hours prep, because the monster is in, like, body paint, like, full, you know.
Right.
But the physical shooting, it's like 6 hours gets fit into 1 minute, and people watch it on their phone, and they're like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Or, or they're like, this is amazing, or they're like, oh, okay, cool. It's like 60 seconds, but
Right.
yeah, it's a lot of time that goes
Mhm.
into a minute, or even like a feature length, you know.
Even like commercial spots. Like I did a motion capture 15-second spot. That was 8 hours.
Yeah.
8 hours for a motion capture spot, just to get in the suit and to do multiple takes, different emotions to throw in here and there. 15 seconds, 8.5 hour day. I knew what I was getting involved in, and they even like tell you at the beginning, and sometimes the person who is setting you up for the gig, they'll tell you a couple days in advance. I always like a day in advance. Some kind of time frame, like, okay, what's the schedule? What are we working with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also depends on who you are working with, too. That's another huge
Another
and important
thing.
thing. Like, you might have a producer who, like, everything might be cool and you're getting everything flowing and you're doing the project, but then when you're on the set, then all of a sudden they feel like they're the director, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, and then
You
you're
know,
like opening a whole other can of worms.
Exactly. Or even actors with an ego. I mean, you get some people like John's easy to work with, Ben's easy to work with, but then there are some of those other ones that are just all like,
Yeah.
you know.
It's tough. Yeah. I had an actor, it's not an ego thing, but it kind of brought up it reminded me of something. We were doing a 360 VR film, which was really cool. Like, we creating a narrative within like a 360 world. So we did two of these
that sounds
films.
really cool.
Yeah,
That's
we did
awesome.
one called The Duel, and we did one called The Seance. The Duel, we finished, and we were able to present it. The Seance had too many technical, like, we weren't able to finish it, which sucked, because we were like, this is so cool. Basically, it's like a bunch of actors. RJ was in this one, too.
She was.
Yeah, sorry, I just realized.
That's great. That's great.
It's basically friends are sitting at a seance table, and the 360 camera is in the middle. It's supposed to be that we want the viewer to think that they're at the seance with you. And I wrote the script where certain visual or audio cues would cause the viewer to look in a certain direction, and the story follows that way. So in the seance, basically, it's friends gathering to have a seance. Obviously, things go wrong, and there's a ghost, and you can figure out the rest. But the reason I brought this up when you're talking about challenges on set is I was working with an amazing actress that day, and I don't want to give anything away, but she just had got a text from her husband who wanted to get a divorce with her. So it was just like one of those things that in the middle of shooting. She was having a breakdown, and I'm like, what's going on? And she was just having a moment, and she's like, my relationship and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I had to bring her back into what we were doing, because we just had one day of shooting. But it was just one of those things where it was crap,
And you didn't expect anything
you
like
don't expect that. And she was just having a really tough moment. I don't think it was texted, that it was just about that situation.
Okay.
She had gotten a message or something, and she just was going through a really tough moment, and I had to sit down with her and be like, okay, we gotta go back to this project. It was really hard.
But can you use this emotion right now for the scene?
I don't remember exactly what I said, but I think I had said something. I had to figure out a way to really gently bring her back to the present and just be like, we're almost done here. We just need to finish out the rest of the day. But, I think I heard an interview where there was an actress, I can't remember her name, but she's in a movie or in a series called Hacks, I think, or something. And she's like a lead in it. She's an older actress, and she was talking with, it was on NPR, she was talking with Terry Gross about how her husband actually passed away during the production of it.
Oh,
and Terry Gross,
and that's a family emergency.
Yeah,
yes, it
and
is.
Terry Gross literally said, like, she asked her, she's like, how did you get through that? How did you experience that and then were able to finish the film? And she basically said, yeah, it was awful and hard. She was like, but I committed to this project and I had this many more days of shooting, and she's like, I just figured it out.
Okay.
But I guess what you were talking about with, like, the actress wasn't difficult in that moment, but it was a difficult experience, like a moment that she was having, and it's like, how do you work,
and prepare for something?
You don't prepare.
Yeah,
how do you adapt?
Yeah, how do you exactly? How do you adapt? Like, how are you able? Because so much of acting, and you can probably speak more to it, John, but it's about being present. You have to be present, and you have to be open and vulnerable. And it's like, if you have something like that clouding your memory or your
can't be distracted.
Head.
You got to bring your A game every day.
Yeah. So that was just the moment I remember that I was like, okay, like, how do I get her back into set and excited and focused on what's going on?
Yeah.
And ultimately we were able to, but
that's good.
It was tough, It's like,
sure.
It was hard.
That actually brings up a good point, because I'm a big fan of learning psychology.
Yeah.
And like, I've been fortunate to grow up in the performing arts, so I kind of like ease my way, like, accidentally into knowing how to, like, talk to people like that. But I think, like, also studying psychology for fun was also another way of saying, like, like, you can kind of prepare for those situations. And, I mean, there's really no blueprint, for it. Because if there's a family emergency, like, say, like, like her husband was in an accident or whatever, I'd just say, just go. Just go to the hospital, you just have to freeze production or whatever. But unless it's their call to say, like, no, show must go on. Because in a lot of ways, like, people don't understand the mind of an artist, that is their mentality. Like, sometimes their mindset's in that. And if their significant other doesn't really recognize that, then they shouldn't be with an artist. It's not, I mean...
Watch your reckless heart. No, I'm kidding. Shameless plug. But no, you're exactly right.
And it is selfish, yes, but yet it's also one of those, like, you know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
And if you don't, or if you don't like it, well then, I mean, as much as, like, it might be a big heartbreak to, like, leave that person, it's almost like,
There's no place in this world, or at least in this business, for divas or things like that.
No,
steak. Where's my steak?
The diva stuff is ridiculous. Like, I remember there was somebody for an independent little thing, and they were like, "Oh, you guys don't have a trailer," and it was like, "What? Like, are you fucking for real?
You really think we can afford a trailer?
Yeah.
We're trying to make this movie for, let's be generous, $2,000. I mean,
but the person didn't even know, like real filmmaking.
Yeah.
Like, he thought everything was Hollywood. Like how so many people, like, I was on the set of The Avengers up in New York.
Oh, wow.
And people said to me, like, at my job, well, what are you doing here? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I was just there. It's not like, oh, hey, remember this guy? Yeah, let's hire him and bring him on. It's like, it doesn't work like that. Right. So...
The closed set, you're, like, behind the barricade. Like, yeah, you can see certain things going on, but
I mean, like, there were people that, like, they heard me talk, like, oh, here's the gobo heads and the arms for the C-stands, and so they were like, oh, you know your shit, and it's like, well, yeah, but it wasn't like, hey, you want to come, like, do the sequel with us, or, shoot next day or whatever. It wasn't anything like that. It was just like, all right, here you go.
Well, yeah, I mean, people get hired for these roles, and for a lot of people, it's their, it's
first time.
It's their first time, or it's their how they make a living. So, the average set's not going to be like, oh yeah, like come be this position, because they already have someone. You know what I mean? Or but yeah. It's professional, it's a profession for a lot of people, so
absolutely,
it's a way of living.
Yeah, exactly.
What were some films that have impacted your wanting to pursue more film? Like, what were some films that you've seen over your life?
So I'm really big into, like, I love historical, like, period films and dramas. I remember when I was in college, I saw like the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. I love that movie. And again, like I wasn't a film student, so like I think like for me, you know, I was an English major, and so obviously you're like still in that creative world, but I would spend my nights watching films. Like I would just like watch them, and I don't think at the time I realized like I was like, you know, I really love this. Like maybe I should look into pursuing. It didn't click for whatever reason, but that was a film that I just remember watching, and just like I love the historical aspect of it, but the way it's shot and narrated, it's like so amazing and beautiful. I love Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? That's a great film.
That,
like,
I feel like, is very underrated.
Yeah. It's just like, I love that they take like it's like based on the Odyssey, so they have that kind of like thread of it. But then it's like, what I love about the film, obviously the music, the soundtrack's amazing, but I feel like you're in this world, like you're definitely in like the 1930s, like Depression era time, and it transports you. Like I just love that. I think they did a really great job. Like it was just amazing. So I love that movie. I love Pride and Prejudice by he always teases me well, I love like the director Joe Wright. He's a British director. Yes. He did Pride and Prejudice with Keira Knightley, but he also has done Atonement.
That's right.
I love Atonement. So again, like big historic epics. So yeah, so I mean, I definitely love, like my dream is to make a historic film. Like I have a script that's set during the Civil War that I'd love to make one day.
Nice.
It's a great premise.
Yeah, so I don't want to give it away.
Right.
Exactly, yes. Which I think too, like growing up in this area where it's like you're around like Philadelphia and like, you know, just there's so much history, and like I grew up in Delaware, but like even just in Pennsylvania area and like being between DC and Philly, like there's just so much history. So for me, I would love to make a historical epic. I'm trying to think of other films that like influenced me. I love, this is a random one. Have you ever seen like The Libertine with Johnny Depp?
That's one I haven't seen.
I've seen part of it. I was actually watching it with Jeff the one time. That's the movie where he goes, well, freeze my piss, right?
Yeah, he plays...
What?
I haven't seen it in so long, but he plays a rake, like back in the like 17th century.
Okay.
So he's just kind of like this man about town, and it's based on like a true story. It's like based on a historical figure. I haven't seen it in so long, I can't even like recount it, but I just think it was one of those films that I watched like when I was in college. I just got like sucked into the world of it. I think I just loved like the costumes and the era, and Johnny Depp, you know, I was a fan of Johnny Depp at the time. Pirates of the Caribbean was huge, so I was like,
I remember that at the time.
Yeah.
2003, that was when that movie came out.
Yeah.
I think that movie came out slightly before the second one was coming out, if I remember correctly.
Well, it made so much money that they greenlit the sequel right away. Dead Man's Chest. I know you've talked a little bit about Knight's Tale before, too.
I love A Knight's Tale. I love The Dark Knight. You know, I love Heath Ledger. I love The Patriot.
Hey, The Patriot's a fun movie.
It is. I know it is.
I don't be ashamed of it.
I think because for Knight's Tale, you brought up like the idea of introducing classical music to a medieval story, and it also has like
classic rock to medieval,
contemporary dialogue too, as well. That's kind of thrown in there.
Yeah, I mean, like again, I was 12 or 13 when The Knight's Tale came out, so I was just like enamored with Heath Ledger. Let's be real. But I think like back then for me, I love that movie is because that was the first time I was introduced to like classic rock. I remember being young and just listening to the soundtrack over and over again, and it was like it has Heart on there, it has like David Bowie, it has
Queen.
just Queen, and I was just like
AC/DC.
Yeah, like I grew up like I went to Catholic school, like I was probably a little sheltered, you know, and I remember just like at this time I was like, you know, wow, like what is this music, you know, and then I like dove into like classic rock genre, but that, you know, my dad loves like Aerosmith, so I would hear like a little bit here and there, but A Knight's Tale I think was the first time as like a teenager or a young person I was exposed to like just this genre of music, and I think like that film was great because it does kind of marry those like, it's like that historic period of like medieval, but then it has these great like you know, the 70s classic rock music, and it works, you know.
I'm glad you brought that up because especially at your age that you said you saw it, it's also good for, like, like especially like we were so spoiled at that age that when that movie came out, like if we actually saw a historical piece, it either had to be your taste or it wasn't. But here they incorporated like no way, dude. Heath Ledger looked way too pretty in that movie for what they really would have looked like.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know,
he's like tan and like bleach, like surfer hair.
You know, they made sure he was the hero of the movie.
Yeah.
And
jacked muscles.
and they definitely made it like more appealing to like a younger crowd. It was fun. It was something to watch. The music like helped keep you into the movie. It wasn't just a historical piece about a jouster. And
it's fun too.
Exactly.
You know, it's a fun film.
It is a fun film. Like I remember when I first saw it, I said, "This is actually really entertaining," and I really enjoyed it. Like to tell you the truth, my favorite scene is probably when the girl who did the armor,
oh yeah,
when she makes the Nike swoosh in it.
Yeah,
I was like, oh my god,
that little like
tongue in cheek, so obvious.
It was classic. I was like, that was really good.
Yeah.
So they like are like poking fun and like putting modernized things.
Yeah.
But you know, we could adapt to that. It was like, okay, so it's a historical period piece, but yet they have music that we're familiar with, and then they're having some modern jokes in there as well. And I was like, this, and it kind of like might get your interest a little bit if you say like, well, what were these jousters doing?
Right.
And you might go back and
and it's like a movie about jousting. It's like what I don't think there's a lot made out of any out.
I know there was a documentary
jousting.
about I think like 11 years ago called Heavy Metal,
okay,
where it was actually full on modern day jousting
That's
up in Canada. And holy shit, is it scary and dangerous because you get killed.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, back in the day you got killed, but there were a lot of things that went wrong during that show where you're wearing full, I mean, it's called heavy metal for a reason.
Okay,
you're going full speed with a jousting stick on a horse, trying to knock the other guy off, and you get splinter fragments and you get that goes through the armor and you get injuries. And they want to show you this is how dangerous it is, and it's still very much a thing. I don't know if it's a thing anymore, but it was just a fascinating documentary. And ironically, we were watching this while we were working at the Renaissance Fair. It just happened to come out around that time. A show called Heavy Metal about jousting in the modern day era.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm trying to think other films. I mean, I unironically, like, genuinely loved the film Gettysburg when it came out. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a 3-hour, like, I was like in 8th grade, and I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. Like, because I'm just a big nerd. But, like...
What 8th grader is like...
I know, it's what I'm saying. I remember we were learning about the Civil War, I think, in 8th grade, and, my teacher was just like, okay, guys, like, you know, back in the day, like, they rolled the TV out in the car. We're going to watch a movie. So, like, it may have been the fact that, like, we didn't have to, like, read it in books. You know, I was, like, excited because, you know, but...
They did that for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I really was, I still am, like, into history back then, so, yeah, I genuinely liked Gettysburg.
That's so funny.
But, yeah, and I mean, like, documentaries, too, like, stuff on the History Channel, like, Ken Burns stuff, I liked that. I don't know if it influenced me, but, like, you know, I just remember watching them at a young age. And
did John introduce you to Never Sleep Again and Crystal Lake Memories?
No.
I'll have to at some point. These are some really well-made documentaries about some... segments in the horror canon, like Never Sleep Again is about the Elm Street saga.
Okay.
And there are a lot of great behind-the-scene footage and interviews with a lot of the actors throughout that entire franchise and legacy and their stories, and they always do one film at a time, and Crystal Lake Memories kind of follows the same formula, made by the same director, too.
Oh, cool.
So he obviously has a love for the craft and for the genre, but... And then you've got a couple of the other ones coming out, you know, In Search of Darkness that's already come out, In Search of Tomorrow's right around the corner about 80s action and sci-fi, and they always follow similar formula. And they're really fascinating because it's these segments and these moments you never think about, these stories that you can only find out if you watch a specific documentary. Sometimes you can't find out everything on the internet. You can't find certain things. You have to go to the source.
Right.
Which is really, it's great.
That's awesome.
And for aspiring filmmakers and people in film in general, it's great hearing like the producers, the directors, the DPs, and the actors all tell these stories. Like I remember when I first saw Never Sleep Again, one of my favorite teachers that I had, I said, "Hey, you got to watch this and check it out." And he's like, how is it? Because he was a big horror fan and into the psychology and stuff. I said, this is like one of the best documentaries I've ever seen.
Okay.
So I made him a copy of it, and then I found out he wound up playing segments for classes then after
awesome.
it. So I was like,
That's
you're
really
welcome.
Cool. That's awesome.
So I was really proud of that.
Never Sleep Again.
Never Sleep Again. The
Yeah.
Elm Street Legacy.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It's an excellent documentary, and also for filmmaking and just in general, because I think Nightmare on Elm Street, the whole series, is just a fantastic story in itself. Like how nobody gave Wes Craven the time of day. Nobody gave him the time of day for this script in particular, except for a no-name company called New Line Cinema, and now look at what they became.
Right.
And it's like known as the house that Freddy built because that franchise started it, and they basically were like ride or die with the first movie.
Yeah.
And they wrote, and look what happened.
It just goes to show you that, like, you don't know what your audience will react to or want more. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the great thing about storytelling, you know? Like you were saying earlier, it might feel like a lot of studios are just regurgitating or repurposing stories over and over again.
For it.
And it's like the stories that are so different, you know, are the ones that really resonate about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, when it's unique and it has legs and there's heart, and when you can tell there's heart, it lives on forever, as like this has. You know, it's you know, and it has no awards. I mean, maybe it has like horror awards now or something.
Well, I think the horror genre is like, it's not like valued as much in some ways. Like, I think I was reading somewhere about like
we've talked about this to death. Oh yeah.
Like, I think I was reading something about like award shows, and it was like actors that weren't nominated for awards. Like, it was talking about Hereditary with like Toni Collette, and like, but it was like she, I thought, gave an amazing performance. Like, for what her performance was, it was like insane. But then it listed like all these different, I think it was like Anna Taylor-Joy in The Witch.
Yeah.
Like, I also want to say too, like, horror is a genre I love too. I'm a little bit more into like haunted house stories and like folklore. Like, I don't really get too much into the gory stuff, but because I just love like the folklore. I think the historical aspect too, like, appeals to me.
I mean, we love all of it.
Yeah.
Demonic possession.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
We love it. Demons,
evil.
ghosts. Yeah. But I guess just to your point, like, it was just an article that was like, these women or actors, they put on such amazing performances in horror, but like they're very rarely nominated or acknowledged for it. And it's like, you know, why is that? And I think, you know.
I know Linda Blair was like one of the last ones to be nominated for something.
Yeah.
And I think that was it.
Yeah.
Rick Baker for American Werewolf in London for the makeup. That's makeup.
But,
that's not acting.
And that's rightfully so.
Yeah.
Because that makeup was ahead of its time when that came out.
It was, yes.
But I mean,
Silence of the Lambs. I mean, that's kind of like psychological thriller. I mean, like there are some horror elements in it too, but it's more of a crime thriller.
I love crime thrillers. Yeah. I love thrillers. Yeah.
Just underappreciated.
Yep. I mean, and to be fair though, the genre had kind of dwindled there for a while because it was either crappy horror or reboots and stuff, and the reboots really weren't all that good either.
Why a lot of directors want to gravitate towards independent filmmaking, because they know that their films will stand a chance to do what they want to do, and rather than, like you said, regurgitate the same reboot, remake, tired and tried troops to death, which they will do as long as the damn thing makes money. And if it doesn't, then they will stop making those movies.
Exactly. I think independent filmmaking is going to come back more, especially now because, unfortunately, like, politics are playing an effect into it, and how, like, the spoiled actors and celebrities are like kind of telling us how to live our lives. You know, like, we don't want to hear it, and now there's going to be like political correctness in the movies that they make because that's the machine and that's what they want to have out. And if people say, I just want to go in and watch a movie, and if a director or somebody says, look, I'm just going to make what I want to make, and I mean, of course there's going to be restrictions because of MPAA, or like you said, like working with your crew and saying like what they think is right and what might just be good for a general audience. Because if you go too much, like especially sex, like if there's like way too much nudity, or it just becomes gratuitous, and it's like it's not symbolic in the film at all.
Well, I think, you know, people want to be entertained. You know what I mean? I don't think people want to have a message
for everything.
Yeah, for everything. It's like, also you have to remember, like, as a filmmaker, I mean, I guess it's like a dance, you know? It's like you want to put your story out there, but you're entertaining people. So it's like, you know, there's a time and a place, I guess.
And then there's some that capture a really good balance about it, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That had like a family value message to it. Did it entertain you? Absolutely. I mean, there was like comedy, there was action, there was like the, oh my god, what's going to happen, because the heroes actually fall in the movie more than they actually succeed, which is even very rare. We've talked about that before. But that was a movie that like actually like really meshed and gelled together. It had meaning and entertainment value to it. And you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Thea agrees too.
Wow.
Alrighty.
Final thoughts? I mean, just in general.
I think this was an amazing episode, actually. Kelly, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me. This was awesome.
I have to admit, this is the one subject I don't know anything about. This is actually what we were talking about prior to doing this episode. I was like, we can do it. I'm like, I'm not going to say anything. I really don't know. I like to listen.
You've got listener 1 and 2, the 2 ears that you got there on the side of your head.
Exactly.
I mean, I just think it's really, really fascinating because I always think, I hear all these stories from all these professional A-list actors that they didn't go to school for theater or for film, and they just like got discovered, and then now it's their career. But I always thought for filmmakers, you had to go to school. You had to learn these classes in order to make it in the industry. But like you said, you started out as an English major, and then you found out more about film, and now it's become your career. So you don't have to specifically go to film school to be a film director, which I think is really, really fascinating.
I mean, like I've been at this, 8 or 9 years now. I mean, I'm not like, I consider it a marathon. It's not a sprint. You know what I mean? So it's something that I hope to continue to be able to do. But yeah, I mean, it really just depends on what you commit your time to. It's not easy by any means. It's fun to talk about and awesome opportunities like this, but it's a lot of hard work, It
is.
And it can be very frustrating at times.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think with film, it's like, it's a great avenue for any creative person. And I have a lot of colleagues that went to film school, and I have colleagues that they started working in film in their 30s and they do it full time. So it just depends on what you want to do and how you want to spend your time, I think.
It's also changed too. Like the old school filmmakers, like there were some guys that had, like Wes Craven.
Yeah.
I believe he was an English major as well.
He was.
And he just kind of like knew Sean Cunningham. And, but because of like him reading in the philosophy and then working with the other guys, he knew like the substance of what it takes to put psychology and meaning into film work, and I think that was one of his strongest points. I think he does have a lot of misses with a lot of movies, but I mean, they all do though. I mean,
everybody has a miss.
Not everything's gonna be perfect.
Heck no.
Or not everything's gonna resonate. So
I mean, like one of the only directors that I've seen that has more good than bad in his resume is probably Tarantino, just because he only makes so many.
He's a very specific
exactly style. It's like he wants to make something that's worth telling that he wants to do.
He doesn't churn them out.
And I think Tarantino is also like, he spent a lot of time, I think, studying like
I agree with you.
Style, like the spaghetti westerns, and like when he was working, I think he worked at like a video store. Like he just like absorbed everything. So like I feel like him too, like he's just very like particular, not only in his craft, but like he just is not like an expert at the knowledge of the style of the film too. So
and someone like James Cameron, I believe he was just special effects and just working on sets. He started learning a thing or two, but he's always developing and evolving his skills.
He was always an infamous workaholic where he did not just one position, but he did 20 positions. He was the special effects artist. He was like the script doctor. He was the first guy there, and he was the last guy to leave.
And I think he created camera technology or helped come up with ideas, like especially for Avatar. And he's another one of those guys that he only makes specific things. Especially because his movies are such a grand scale that I could only imagine how exhausted he probably gets
after every film he makes.
I mean, like especially like at that time, like the limited stuff that they had for Terminator 1 and 2. And then the time that you have to do the makeup prep and the action scenes, those are long days.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so, like, my hat goes off to them for that. I mean, I hope that maybe we see a little bit more of that practicality come back, and that maybe that the CGI is used for limited stuff and not the whole thing like we see more now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But
Greg Nicotero is a name. I don't know if you like from The Walking Dead. That reminded me because he had a career in special effects makeup, and then he was doing like obviously like the conceptual work for Walking Dead, but then he started directing and like producing some of the episodes himself. And I remember like that was so cool to see because like for me like my journey into film or whatever, like I started with these like mixed bag of roles of like art department or this or that, and it's like you can do that, like you can kind of go from one department to another, or you know what I mean, like I think it's important that there is a little bit of that fluidity there, like you know if you have an idea or you know to go for it. So
it's so exciting. It's so exciting.
I mean, some people do need to leave their ego at the door, and you know they just want to.
You're going to find that anywhere, though.
Yeah,
I feel
exactly.
Like. Yeah.
So, but if you really want to grow, you just got to get your foot in the door somewhere and anywhere and just take it from there, grow, learn every sort of aspect, because that'll make you even better as a filmmaker. I've always been, like, I've always said to other people, and I forget if it was Kevin Smith or somebody who said recently, like with the COVID stuff, they said, yo, now's a perfect opportunity to take your time and just learn other aspects of filmmaking.
Definitely.
Especially because you have downtime to do it. And I agree with them, because I think that just makes you more well-rounded and better.
And I think also, too, like, you know, be professional. Like, I think there's kind of like this mystique that you hear about sets where, like you said, it's like the director that's yelling, or like, you know, the egos that are there. And it's like, and I'll be honest, like there have been sets where I haven't been the best version of myself, where I maybe like wasn't the greatest, like, you know, manager, you know what I mean? Like, and it's a learning process. Absolutely. But I think there is this mystique that, you know, you can act how, you know, like a jerk or whatever on a set. And that's not the case. It's like, I think, you know, if someone's looking to get into filmmaking, you know, obviously take chances and be willing to try different things, but remember to be professional and be humble, you know, because it's an industry where, like, you know, your reputation precedes you, like how you are, you know, on a set matters, and it can lead to other opportunities. So, Absolutely. You know, maintaining that professional mindset too, I think is huge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we covered a lot. Oh, John?
I just like to say on a side note, in terms of going back to the Mortal Kombat thing.
Oh, God.
In terms of going back to Mortal Kombat, you thought you tried to sideswipe me on this, but I'm going to say right now that, yes, Thea will agree with me with this. It's nostalgia, and it's because it's a damn fun film that I saw in 1995, and I wanted to see the damn movie in theaters. I think it's a movie that you shouldn't just limit yourself to your couch. Thank you, Thea.
I wasn't talking about the 95 one. I was talking about the recent one.
I'm talking about the recent one. This is the reason why I wanted to watch the new one in theaters, because, yes, I have nostalgia for Mortal Kombat, the video game, and I saw it in theaters back then. I want to see it in theaters now. So that's that.
Well, now that you put the stake in the episode.
The finishing move. The fatality.
All right. I think that'll wrap things up.
I think
for
it
this
will.
Episode. Kelly, thank you so much again for joining us. This was a lot of fun. I even feel good talking about it, because I was like, this is my kind of thing a little more. So thank you for joining us for this.
Thank
you for having me. This was really fun.
Of course.
Yeah. Everybody listening, Kelly Murray.
Yay, Kelly!
And little Thea. She's waving high.
She's waving. Thumbs up.
So with all that being said, we shall sign off. This is Colin Peters.
John Rochetter.
Jeff Manfred.
Thank you all once again for listening. Stay safe. Stay crazy.
Please, somebody help me.
Oh, yeah.